I am alive. Neil's on Dynasty, welcome. Please like, share, subscribe. Be kind, helpful, grateful. Buy some silver, some platinum, some crystallized osmium. And become a billionaire and be kind to everybody. Here we go. We're going to start with why people hate China and Africa. Why not? Everyone hates China and Africa. They're Western colonials, aren't they? Yeah, they're Western colonials. They're Western imperialists. No, they're not. They're Chinese.
What more we know about the scale of this incident?
Good morning, Jen. So what we know is that it's far bigger than what had been anticipated or reported by the government. Initially, the government reported only 50,000 tons had been released into the river, but the report by Zara reveals that up to 30 tons more was released, which puts it at 1.5 million tons. And to put this into context, this is toxic waste that can fill over 400 Olympic-sized swimming pools. And it's not just any form of toxic waste. It contains heavy metals like arsenic, cyanide, and uranium. And all this was released into the river, and now they're terming it as one of the worst mining disasters that have ever been recorded globally. And we saw the US also issue a warning on the scale of this disaster, recall its people who are in the area and the surrounding areas. And we've seen the Finnish and Australian embassy update their health reports that they've put out. We are also seeing Transparency International call out the government and say that this poses severe long-term effects, particularly if immediate measure is not taken. But this doesn't look like the priority of the government. They have severely downplayed the effects of this disaster and overplayed their hand. For a river whose pH is worn, this is as acidic as it gets. It can dissolve human bones, but the government said we've poured some lime into it. We are neutralizing the acidity, going as far as saying the water is safe. Some government officials have tried to drink it, but this does not negate how big and how deep the scope of this disaster runs.
And it could certainly complicate the relationship Zambia has with China, who's been one of its biggest investors over the past few years, surely.
Absolutely, because SML is a state-owned company and its parent company had pledged to spend at least $1.3 billion to support Zambia's bid to triple their copper production. Hakainde Hichilema wants to increase production from 1 million tons annually up to 3 million tons annually. And this is money that could have gone a long way. And maybe that's why we're seeing the government being very diplomatic, tiptoeing around the issue so that they don't tip some live wires and make this investment go into the back burner. Zambia is also in the process of restructuring their debt to Chinese lenders to the tune of $5.6 billion. And that's something that they also do not want to jeopardize. But there's also something to be said about China's insatiable appetite for minerals, particularly across the African continent. And they're leaving a trail of disasters that is beginning to taint their carefully curated image of worthy partners in these win-win situations. We've seen fatalities in mining sites. We've seen conflict between mining companies and communities. We are now seeing environmental disasters coupled with corruption and fraudulent activities. China needs to go back to the drawing board and rethink how it's going to do business, particularly mining on the African continent.
Did you hear that? That was live from Africa, where they say, it wasn't live, it was live yesterday, where they say they don't like how China's doing business in the whole damn continent of Africa. So next time someone tells you Chinese love Africans and Africans love Chinese, tell them they're full of poo-poo. Now we're going to go back to, I had to delete a video I did because YouTube was being poo-poo heads. And it was the one that had the Lagrange points, showed the Lagrange points. This one also shows the Lagrange points. It's Star Talks. Going to give him a thumbs up here.
Asteroids? What's up with that? Well, you might have seen in the news in recent weeks that there's colonies of asteroids being hidden by, sheltered by, harbored by Venus.
Covered up by the sun.
Sister planet in the solar system. By the way, we call it our sister planet because Venus was a goddess and Mars is our brother planet because Mars is a god. That's why. Otherwise, I don't really care. It's just a planet. I'm not really into genderizing cosmic objects, but given the multi-thousand-year history of that being the case, we'll go along with it. So there's Venus. She is harboring asteroids in 2 locations in the vicinity of 2 orbiting objects where all forces balance. The centrifugal forces that would have something fly away from you, and the gravitational forces that would pull things in. Discovered by the French mathematician Lagrange. He discovered 5 of these locations, and the 2 of interest to us are the one that precedes Venus in its orbit and one that trails Venus in its orbit. And each of those makes a perfect 60, 60, 60 degree equilateral triangle.
See, those are Lagrange points. There's one at the top where my cursor is on the other side of Venus. There's one, as you said, 60, 60, and then there'd be one over here on this side, given stable orbits that this planet can give gravitationally to other objects in the sky.
Angle with Venus and the sun. Any asteroid that wanders into that zone will feel no force or proclivity to go anywhere but just hang out. And so Venus literally is harboring asteroids. I can say that's a literal understanding of what's happening. It's the gravity of Venus, the sun, and the centrifugal forces collect asteroids over the billions of years the solar system has been here. It turns out Venus is also hiding them. Not just harboring them, hiding them. Because the sequence of planets in order from the sun is Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars. So wait a minute, Venus is between Earth and the sun. We will never see Venus on the opposite side of the sky, the way we do for Mars, depending on where it is in its orbit. Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, all of those at some part of their orbit are sitting opposite the sun from where we are in our.
I believe she's in Australia, actually. So it should be, wow, it's about 6:30 in the morning in Australia right now.
Orbit. That's the darkest part of the sky. That's midnight.
Depending
Whereas
on
with Venus, anytime we're looking at Venus, it is somewhere near the sun. You ever wondered why Venus is visible as the morning star? In German, that's Morgenstern, became some people's last name. And it's an evening star.
Morgensen.
Morning twilight, evening twilight. Because the sun is about to rise or the sun is just set. And there's Venus hanging out near the sun. It is very hard to detect asteroids in the sun's glare. Not only that, if the asteroid is opposite the sun, there's something called specular reflection of light, where the intensity of the reflected light back to you, because they don't give off their own light, you're totally dependent on reflected sunlight. If it is opposite the sun and you pass between them, it is as bright as it could possibly be. It's not only fully lit by the sun, the laws of reflection enhance the brightness of the asteroid beyond what you'd normally think it would be. The same is true for the full moon. The full moon is not twice as bright as a half moon. It is 12 times brighter than a half moon. Because of the laws of reflection on modeled surfaces such as the surface of the moon, you get this additive effect. So if you ever want to look at asteroids, discover asteroids, you want to make sure you're looking at them in the middle of the night when the sun is on the opposite side of the sky. No such opportunity with the asteroids that Venus is not only harboring, but hiding. Now, these asteroids already live inside of our orbit. Most asteroids are in the asteroid belt, including my own. It's 13123 Tyson. By the way, when I was told they were going to name an asteroid after me, I double checked. I said, does it cross Earth's orbit? Because you don't want that asteroid aiming at Earth. asteroid Tyson will take out, you don't want that asteroid. No risk of asteroid Tyson ending civilization. So you might ask, how big are these asteroids? If they're tiny and one encounters Earth, it would just burn up in the atmosphere. Above a certain size, it'll sort of fall but not hurt anybody. Most of Earth is uninhabited. How big are they? Well, maybe the size of a stadium. Yeah, that's not so uncommon a size of asteroid. In fact, the smaller the asteroid, the more of that size there are out there. So the one we should keep an eye on are those that are big enough to destroy a city. The clickbait version of that is city killers, all right? Not city slickers, city killers. I'm not worried only because most of Earth's surface is water. Most of Earth's surface that's land is not city. It's like deserted, unoccupied. And even where it does have people, it's rural or suburbs. Cities are such a vanishingly small fraction of the total area of the Earth. Statistically, I'm sitting just fine as an urban dweller. So most asteroids, including mine, orbit in the asteroid belt, very distant from harm's way. But the moment an asteroid ends up with a wayward orbit, and there are many ways that can happen, and many asteroids have such orbits, it crosses the orbit of Earth. It's now susceptible to be captured by Venus and have it hang out there. But also, this is kind of a repository where if another asteroid comes by and jiggles one loose, we're not that far from Venus. Venus, of all planets, is the closest planet to us in the solar system. So if it's got asteroids up front and asteroids in tow, and they're hiding in plain sight in the glare of the sun, we're at risk of one of those asteroids getting dislodged from its orbit and having us in its sights. And we wouldn't even know.
Oh, we back again, y'all. How y'all been? It's getting hot. Hey, through the rays.
There's no reason to have to listen to this crap. I'll mute it for y'all. It's one of those 15-second commercials. Sorry about that. I try and get rid of them as soon as possible.
It had occurred. Unless it sort of entered Earth orbit and showed up on the other side of us from the sun, then we discover it, but by then it might be too late. So, just a fascinating result published only recently, thinking about these asteroids that Venus harbors.
So what do you guys think about asteroids that you didn't know that Venus harbors? Absolutely nothing? That's cool. Let's see. Let's talk about anti-gravity and see if it's real. Is it real? SpaceX unveiled groundbreaking update. Artificial gravity tech shocks NASA. Oh, let's see what they say. I believe they're going to say something about China.
Engineers are panicking. SpaceX just achieved what they called physically impossible. True artificial gravity in space. For 60 years, NASA insisted artificial gravity was science fiction. Then Musk quietly tested rotating starships, creating real Earth gravity at 17,500 miles per hour. The results? Astronauts walking normally, no bone loss, no muscle decay. Here's the kicker. One starship has more space than the entire $150 billion ISS. Multiple connected starships spinning together? It's not just a space station, it's humanity's first space city. But why is NASA suddenly scrambling to copy this impossible technology? And what are they desperately trying to hide? Let's dive right in. Here's the brutal truth NASA buried. Every astronaut who spends 6 months in space returns fundamentally broken. Their bones crumble like chalk. Their hearts shrink. Their muscles waste away so badly they can barely walk. Scott Kelly came back from his year in space unable to stand for more than a few minutes. His identical twin brother Mark stayed on Earth. The difference was terrifying. Scott's bone density dropped 20%. His cardiovascular system aged decades. His DNA literally changed. But here's what's insane. NASA has known this for 60 years and called artificial gravity impossible. They spent $150 billion on the ISS while astronauts slowly died in zero gravity. Why? Because every attempt at spinning spacecraft ended in catastrophic failure. until December 2023, when SpaceX did the impossible. While everyone watched Starship explode spectacularly, SpaceX was conducting a classified experiment 200 miles above Earth. 2 Starship prototypes, connected by a 100-meter tether, spinning at 2.3 rotations per minute. The result? Perfect 0.38 grams artificial gravity, Mars level, sustained for 72 continuous hours. NASA's reaction? Emergency classified briefing, budget reallocation, complete policy reversal. The same agency that called this impossible suddenly allocated $2.8 billion for gravitational environment research. What scared them so badly? Remember when NASA bragged about the ISS being football field-sized? Pure marketing. The ISS has 13,696 cubic feet of cramped, chaotic living space. Cables everywhere, no privacy. Astronauts floating like helpless balloons. 1 Starship, 11,000 cubic meters. That's 25 times more space than the entire ISS. But here's where it gets insane. SpaceX's leaked plans show 6 Starships connected in rotating rings, total living space with Earth gravity, a 40-story skyscraper in space, at 1/10 the cost of the ISS. NASA's Bill Nelson saw these plans and called an emergency 2-hour meeting. The next day, NASA reversed 20 years of artificial gravity policy. Why the panic? While NASA's astronauts returned broken, China's taikonauts came back healthier. Longer missions, better recovery. How? Intelligence sources confirm China's been secretly testing artificial gravity modules since 2022. Their Tiangong expansion isn't just about space science, it's about proving they can keep humans healthy indefinitely in orbit. This isn't a space race anymore.
I don't have the story in front of me, but there was last year a female Chinese scientist that was leading the way in anti-grav technology, came to the United States and up and disappeared. You guys remember that story? You probably don't. It's like one of those stories I would have caught.
It's a survival race. The nation that masters artificial gravity first controls the future of human space exploration. Mars colonies, asteroid mining, deep space missions. NASA realized they were about to lose everything to technology they dismissed as science fiction. Here's the genius part. SpaceX didn't invent new physics. They engineering around NASA's fundamental assumptions. NASA's mistake, they thought you needed massive space stations with gyroscopes and counterweights. SpaceX's breakthrough used the spacecraft themselves as the rotating structure. Instead of building a giant Ferris wheel in space, SpaceX created a cosmic carousel using ships that fly themselves. Each Starship becomes both transportation and destination. Land anywhere, connect anything, create gravity everywhere. The secret sauce? Starship's stainless steel construction handles rotational stress perfectly. Empty methane tanks become pressurized living modules. Raptor engines provide precise rotational control. NASA's engineers admit they never considered this because they were trapped thinking like space station builders, not spacecraft innovators. Classified SpaceX data reveals something extraordinary. In just 72 hours of artificial gravity, astronauts showed cellular regeneration patterns that normally take months of Earth recovery. But here's the twist.
Did you hear that? Basically, in that one statement he just said, is you heal naturally, more rapidly in space with artificial gravity.
Artificial gravity doesn't just prevent deterioration. Early data suggests it enhances human performance, improves sleep cycles, enhanced cognitive function, better immune response. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, NASA flight surgeon who reviewed the data, we're not just talking about healthy astronauts. We're looking at the potential for space-adapted humans who outperform Earthbound ones. Are we witnessing the birth of a superior human subspecies? While NASA publicly partners with SpaceX, internally there's
Mike, how did you know I was high? What's up, brother?
scrambling desperately. Project Artemis isn't just about the moon. It's about establishing America's first artificial gravity lunar base before China gets there.
Basically, what he just said, from my understanding, is from my belief that humans are alien to this planet by just looking at us. No other species in the history of the planet has followed mankind's lead. Therefore, evolutionaryism is bullshit. If we perform better in space with artificial gravity than we do on Earth, then I would say our natural space to be would be space with artificial gravity, because our bodies seem to be adapted so well to that. But that's just a theory.
Leaked Pentagon documents reveal Operation Gravity Shield, classified military applications of artificial gravity, zero-G combat training, orbital weapons platforms, space manufacturing.
Zero-G combat training. God, I'm glad we've got the Space Force.
That requires gravity. But SpaceX holds all the patents. Every artificial gravity system needs Musk's technology. NASA went from dismissing the concept to being...
That's all well and good when it says NASA holds all the patents. But what you got to do to get a patent is you got to turn it over to the government for them to approve the patent, which means the government now has it as well. Just a heads up.
Completely dependent on SpaceX to achieve it. The reversal is so complete that NASA's requesting $2.8 billion specifically for catching up to what SpaceX already accomplished. Here's what investors don't understand. Artificial gravity doesn't just solve health problems. It unlocks trillion-dollar industries previously impossible in space. Space manufacturing requires gravity. Pharmaceutical production, crystal growth, metal forging. Without artificial gravity, these industries...
Space mining, space mining. How many times have I said it, folks? Space
can't
mining.
exist in space. With it, every Fortune 500 company is suddenly looking up. Intel's CEO visited SpaceX last month. So did Boeing, GE, and Pfizer. They're not interested in rockets. They want access to artificial gravity manufacturing platforms. Early projections, space-based manufacturing with artificial gravity could generate $500 billion annually by 2035. NASA's entire budget, $25 billion. SpaceX just made NASA's program look like pocket change. But this technology has a terrifying dual-use potential. The same systems creating comfortable 1-gram environments can generate crushing 10-gram forces. Imagine rotating platforms designed to disable enemy space.
1 gram to 10 gram, that's 1G or 10G. Most of us normal mere mortals would pass out somewhere between 4 and 7 Gs. And yeah, after that, it starts going into a long term. If you're in the 7, 8, 9, or 10G, you'll die.
Spacecraft or create unreachable orbital zones. Military strategists call it gravitational warfare, using artificial gravity as a weapon. The technology saving astronaut lives can destroy enemy ships. This is why NASA's resistance wasn't just technical, it was political. Artificial gravity is inherently weaponizable. Every peaceful application has military potential. Intelligence agencies now monitor artificial gravity research as closely as nuclear programs.
Okay, I got something to say about that. I got something to say. It's better to burn out than to fade away. That's Def Leppard. No, anything can be weaponized. If you go look at England, they took away everyone's guns. People are still getting murdered. You know what they're using? Knives. As soon as they take away the knives, people will use spoons. After they take away the spoons, people will use forks. After they take away forks, people will use tire irons. After they take away tire irons, people will use sticks. You get the point?
SpaceX's roadmap is aggressively ambitious.
What's up, Silver?
Haven 1 launches in 2026 with basic artificial gravity. First Starship gravity cluster, 2027. Full Mars gravity simulation, 2028. By 2030, SpaceX plans rotating space cities housing 1,000 people each. With artificial gravity, these aren't research stations. They're permanent human settlements, manufacturing hubs, military bases. China's response? They've accelerated Tiangong expansion by 3 years. Russia announced a gravitational sovereignty program. Europe's desperately seeking artificial gravity partnerships. The space race isn't about destinations anymore. It's about who controls gravity itself. Here's the final piece of the puzzle. SpaceX's revolutionary Raptor 3 engine
Magneto. Magneto controls gravity. Go with Magneto.
isn't just about thrust, it's specifically designed for artificial gravity applications. With 280 tons of thrust and integrated cooling systems, Raptor 3 can maintain perfect rotational control while handling the extreme
I don't know. You kind of look like Ronan. I was going to ask if you'd been to the doctor lately there, Mike.
thermal stress of spinning spacecraft. Each engine weighs 400 pounds less than Raptor 2, allowing larger artificial gravity structures. Block 3 starships with 42 Raptor 3 engines, they could create artificial gravity environments larger than entire cities. We're talking about space habitats that make the ISS look like a camping tent. But here's
Just remember when I said new technology is going to be coming along, it's going to grow our economy and make everything that we know look like poopy squat kindergarten crap. He's talking about some of it. This is just some of it. There's more coming, guys.
what nobody's asking. What happens when humans adapt to artificial gravity environments? When children are born in rotating space cities? When Mars gravity becomes normal and Earth gravity feels crushing? Early SpaceX data suggests humans in artificial gravity show enhanced spatial reasoning, superior three-dimensional thinking, and improved balance control.
Holy
They're not just surviving in space, they're evolving for it.
man, I want to start an MMA fighting club and take my guys to outer space so they can get real healthy, quick, move faster, be more spatially aware, more cognitively aware, then send them back down to Earth and get all the gold medals. Oh, I'm sorry. Am I thinking like world dominating fucking Pinky in the Brain?
Are we witnessing the dawn of the first space-adapted human subspecies? And if so, who controls that evolution? The implications are staggering. We're not just talking about the future of space exploration. We're talking about the future of humanity itself. So here we are. NASA spent 60 years calling artificial gravity impossible while their astronauts slowly deteriorated in space. Then SpaceX.
All right, guys, I know you're thinking about it. Who wants to build the Death Star and live on it? Come on, be honest.
Quietly proved them wrong in 72 hours. The space race just shifted from reaching destinations to controlling gravity itself. China's accelerating. Russia's scrambling. NASA's frantically playing catch-up with technology they dismissed. But here's what really keeps me up at night. We're not just witnessing a technological revolution. We're watching the birth of space-adapted humans. Kids born in rotating cities who think differently, move differently, see the universe differently than us earthbound humans. The question isn't whether SpaceX's artificial gravity will work.
Look at that.
It already does.
Smoke.
The question is, when your children are living in spinning space cities around Mars, will they still consider Earth home? What do you think?
No.
Are we ready for humanity's next evolutionary leap? Let me know in the comments below.
No. Yes. Maybe. We're already there. It's called Space Force. So I guarantee you we got about 1,000 people up there already.
SpaceX just revealed the terrifying truth about China's August 6th lunar test that NASA tried to keep quiet. While everyone focused on the flashy landing demo, SpaceX spotted something that changes everything. A timeline that puts China just 18 months ahead of America's moon return. What did SpaceX discover that has NASA executives in emergency meetings? Let's dive right in.
Uh-oh. Put on your bathing suit. We're going swimming.
Here's what SpaceX engineers saw that night that made their blood run cold. While the world watched China's flashy yellow flames dancing on steel cables, SpaceX's propulsion team was analyzing something far more terrifying. The mission timeline hidden in plain sight. That wasn't just a ground test. It was China proving they've solved the exact same problem that's been haunting Starship for 3 years. Remember those engine failures on Flight 4? The ones that turned SpaceX's landing into a fireworks show? China's Lanhua just demonstrated flawless engine restart sequences, the same capability Starship still can't reliably perform. Think about this. China tested their complete lunar landing profile in one afternoon. Landing engines, ascent engines, precise thrust control. Everything worked perfectly. Meanwhile, SpaceX has conducted 9 Starship flights and still hasn't nailed a single landing without something exploding. But here's the kicker that SpaceX discovered in those leaked images. Those weren't just pretty pictures China released. SpaceX's analysis team spotted something that changed their entire assessment of the lunar race. The Long March 10 rocket sitting in that Chinese facility wasn't a mock-up or a test article. It was flight hardware with 21 YF-100K engines ready for static fire testing. Let me put this in perspective. When SpaceX builds a Falcon 9, it takes months of testing before the first static fire. China just rolled out a complete heavy lift rocket like they were moving furniture. This suggests their manufacturing pipeline is years ahead of where anyone thought possible. But SpaceX
See, he's going off the presumption that China actually develops their own technology. I know for a fact they do not. They steal it all. So anything that they can do, we can do better, is actually true. And the reason why we're most likely behind in this in particular phase of the lunar landing or exploration is because we're leaps and bounds ahead in the next phase. And that's where we're focusing on, because this is just trivial bullshit, in my opinion.
found something even more disturbing in the technical specifications. Those 21 engines, they're based on technology China perfected 5 years ago with their Long March 5. No experimental methane engines, no unproven orbital refueling, no revolutionary manufacturing techniques that might fail. China chose boring, reliable, proven technology, and boring wins races. Here's the timeline that terrifies NASA.
Doesn't Elon Musk own the Boring Company? Play on words there. Sorry.
If China's already conducting landing tests and their rocket is ready for static fire, they're not targeting 2030 anymore. SpaceX's internal projections put China's first crewed lunar mission at late 2026, 18 months before Artemis 3 even has a prayer of launching. While China was showing off their working lunar lander, SpaceX was dealing with this, another Raptor engine failure during Flight 7. Ship 33 lost multiple engines and exploded during what should have been a routine flight to orbit. This is the brutal math SpaceX doesn't want you to see. China's using hypergolic propellants, the same chemicals that powered Apollo 50 years ago. They ignite on contact, work reliably in space, and don't care about the vacuum of space or months of storage.
Don't care about
SpaceX question mark. They're betting everything on methane-powered Raptors that need to restart after sitting in the cold vacuum of space for weeks. Engines that failed on Flight 4, failed on Flight 7, and still haven't completed a single mission without some kind of malfunction. The leaked footage from China's test showed something SpaceX engineers call engine out capability. When one of China's thrusters shut down during the test, the others immediately compensated. Perfect redundancy, flawless execution. Compare that to Starship's track record. Engine failures lead to mission loss every single time.
But here's the kicker: China can't land their spacecraft or their vehicles back to be reused. So they're going to be spending 1,000 times more money than we are. They're not telling you that part of it.
Here's the twist SpaceX discovered that changes everything. China's been lying about their timeline, and the evidence is hiding in their own footage. Remember when China said 2030 for their first crewed lunar landing? SpaceX's supply chain analysis reveals something shocking. The components for multiple Long March 10 rockets aren't being designed or planned. They're already manufactured and sitting in Chinese factories. Look at the dates. Chang'e 5 returned lunar samples in 2020. Their Mars rover landed successfully. They've mastered far-side lunar landing, something only they've accomplished. This isn't a country 6 years away from human lunar missions. This is a country in the final sprint. The August 6th test wasn't a development milestone. It was a dress rehearsal. SpaceX found purchase orders in the supply chain, data that tell the real story. China's been stockpiling rocket components since 2022.
You know, this is a cool story, but what I heard was SpaceX is working with the NSA if they have knowledge and technical abilities to chase down orders from different companies and put together what's going on. That's Intel. That's the Intel community. So I question this.
They have enough hardware for at least 3 complete lunar missions already built and waiting for assembly. Here's what really scares SpaceX's engineers. While America's been innovating toward cheaper, more efficient space travel, China's been perfecting the art of making space travel work reliably. Their space program doesn't need to turn a profit. It doesn't need to please shareholders or justify costs to Congress. It just needs to put Chinese astronauts on the moon before American ones.
Interesting concept. What do you guys think about that? What you think about that? I don't know, but I think we're being lied to about nuclear. I'm sorry, that's what this is called. The show is called "They're Lying to You About Nuclear." Maxonomics, he's got 160,000 people. I'm gonna give him a thumbs up. Let's see what the hell he has to say.
This nuclear plant was turned on in 1969, the absolute heyday of nuclear power in the U.S. 3 new nuclear reactors were being turned on every year, each flip of the switch sending power to 500,000 homes. But it wasn't just the number of reactors being turned on in a year, it was how fast each one was being built. 5 years from breaking ground to turning it on, giving millions of people the benefit from one of the most profound and steady links in the entire field of economics. The more energy a country uses, the better off its people are. And the U.S. just stopped, but it was years before this.
It was an accident at the 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant. The nation and much of the world has been watching as this nuclear nightmare unfolds.
Chaos and confusion reigned as monitors tried to determine exactly how much radiation was released.
It started more than a decade before Chernobyl. So really what happened? Suddenly, plants that announced construction in the 70s started being delayed 9, 12, 20 years. Only 4 have been built in the U.S. since 1996. This, what really hasn't been well explained before, is exactly what happened.
You pour it out in the hand, and that's radioactive contamination. Very radioactive. That material that I just ate is not soluble in body fluids.
He actually did eat uranium. You can and live to tell about it, apparently. And it wasn't just him. The scientists and researchers at Los Alamos carried mounds of plutonium around in their lab coat pockets during the Manhattan Project.
Here it is, General Groves, plutonium.
The plutonium that went into the first plutonium bomb was driven 220 miles to Los Alamos in a basic Army truck. Zero protective anything. These were the brightest scientists in the world. They were not reckless people.
What do you think about it so far? Mo, I do too, bro. I've never seen sexier astronauts walking on the moon. This story blows me away. Yeah, it's totally believable too, because we've been lied to for our whole lives.
And they all died in old age of natural causes. But the message that made its way to the public was much, much different.
The only and true case is that plutonium is the most deadliest substance known to man.
That messaging of fear was the seed of why the U.S. stopped building nuclear power plants. It took root in a very specific way, which I'll explain in detail here in just a second. But that fear ultimately increased the cost to build, the time to build, by 10x in just 5 years between 1973 and 1978. 3 Mile Island didn't happen until 1979. That fear, really fear of the unknown, ended up as the main input on a single formula that determines how nuclear plants should be built or if they should be built at all.
Looking at the alternatives for energy, nuclear fission must be stopped.
Why are we playing Russian roulette with the American people for nuclear plants whose principal objective is simply to boil water and produce steam?
And we can all kind of feel that, right? Like you go to the dentist, get an x-ray, they put that heavy vest on you, like, oh, this is kind of serious. Dentist leaves the room, closes the door, click. What bombarded your body in that moment was the same amount of radiation that hits your body every single day. It's everywhere. Radiation is impossible to escape. Hitting you right now, coming from the sun and the ground. And in some places where people spend a lot of time, there's way more of it. It is a long 3-month radiation-soaked journey to climb Mount Everest. Once your flight has touched down in Kathmandu, you've made the 2-week trek to base camp, spend 7 weeks getting used to the altitude, getting to the summit, getting back to Kathmandu, and taking a plane back home. A climber has absorbed 3 years worth of radiation that someone at normal sea level altitude will absorb. The more atmosphere between you and the sun, the less radiation gets through and hits you. For every 5,000 feet above sea level, your radiation exposure doubles. Yet, mountaineers, like those that climb Everest, and the Sherpas or guides that basically live at Everest Base Camp 3 or 4 months of the year, don't have a higher risk of cancer or live shorter lives.
Interesting, huh?
People that live in Denver, a mile above sea level, have some of the lowest rates of cancer in the U.S. And that is because the human body has figured out how to live bathed in radiation. You have nerves in your fingers to tell you to stop touching something if it's hot, right? Stop, or that's going to become a problem. But because it's impossible to avoid radiation, your body evolved ways to live with it. Over the course of 10 days, you pick up about 0.2 units of background radiation. At Everest Base Camp, it's 2.5. The 80,000 residents closest to Fukushima after the meltdown, 10 to 50. The workers at Fukushima, 250. What has not been widely reported, because it is kind of a boring headline, there has been no rise in cancer, death, sickness, nothing from Fukushima. Zero. Study after study has shown no effects from the radiation leak.
That there have been no adverse health effects.
Still today, only 50 shore deaths have been recorded from Chernobyl. 2/3 of those came from the firefighters or the operators on site that were often exposed directly to within feet of the reactor core. There has been a significant increase in thyroid cancer from Chernobyl, which sounds scary, but it is a cancer that's easily handled and usually carries no symptoms. The thyroid cancers from Chernobyl have not led to a significant loss of life years. These circles represent all the deaths from different energy sources between 1969 and 2000. Coal, oil, hydro, dams do break occasionally, natural gas, nuclear. Way too big. Nuclear. Wind. Solar. And what really slowed things here in the U.S., 3 Mile Island, exactly 0 fatalities, no health impact at all. It was benign. It wasn't the actual disasters. It was this. This, made law on May 5th, 1975, sent the U.S. nuclear industry to its short, fast death. These are the rules for building, modifying, or extending the life of a nuclear reactor. In 1970, there were 400 industry-accepted standards and 4 rules for building a nuclear plant. By 1978, there were 1,800 standards and 300 new rules that had to be satisfied if you wanted to flip the switch on. This is the critical phrase in that document: as low as is reasonably achievable, also known as ALARA, which says that every bit of radiation, no matter how small, adds a proportionate bump in your lifetime chance of cancer. And those bumps add up over your whole life. In other words, there's no amount of radiation that's ever considered risk-free. And each exposure stacks on top of the last. So if climbing Everest once gave you a 1% chance of getting cancer, then going up a second time now puts you at 2%, a third time puts you at 3%. This is called the linear no threshold model. And because of that, a nuclear plant must get radiation output to a level that is as low as is reasonably achievable. If you can lower radiation exposure that might occur to the public, workers, anyone, by any amount, then you must do it. What's interesting about that is the Nuclear Regulatory Commission admitted in 2021 that they're not sure the linear no threshold model makes sense. It's simply better to be safe than sorry. So if you enshrine that as the guiding principle in the rulebook for building nuclear power plants, anyone was able to challenge the design or plans of a project. This could be a little better, or, and this is a real example, what happens if a 2-foot section of that pipe disappeared? Engineers were like, what? Sections of pipe don't just disappear. We can't model that. If there is no level of radiation that is safe, as low as reasonably achievable, is wide open to interpretation. That is exactly what happened. And there's an immense amount of clean data that shows it. Challenges and rules ramped up. And that is exactly why the time to build a plant absolutely skyrocketed, taking cost to build along with it, because time in this case really did, and in a big way, equal money.
And the funny thing is, now he said it takes 20 years to build a nuclear power station since Trump got back in office, and they changed those regulations and rules because what our government has noticed is our government was the one that got paid by the oil industry to put all that bullshit out. So that way oil would be a big thing for another 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and we wouldn't build power plants. But now it takes less than 6 months to get approval to make a micro or small modular reactor and start building it. So in less than a year and a half, you can have a micro or small modular reactor to where 3 years ago, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, it would have taken you 20 years of regulatory actions to get to that point. So obviously radiation isn't as big a problem as they've made us believe, because it was a hype from the oil industries to get us not to build nuclear and put oil out of business. My personal opinion, it looks like science is backing me with facts, along with paperwork.
Build a plant, hook it up to the grid, deliver electricity to customers. The amount of money a power plant is going to make over its lifetime is very predictable. But get the building timeline or cost wrong, and the predictability goes out the window, because the entire project has to be financed before it makes a single dollar. Loans are taken out upfront, and interest has to be paid on that money from the moment it's received, all through construction, not just once the plant starts running. So the longer the plant isn't running, the more interest it has to pay. The more interest it has to pay, the less attractive it is to build one. But what does it actually cost a major nuclear project to be delayed, let's say, 1 month? The U.S. Congressional Budget Office says $44 million. There are countless stories of construction crews finishing a part of a plant only to have to completely rip it out a few weeks later and rebuild the same thing, just in a slightly different way after a new rule came in. About one rule or standard was being created every day between 1973 and 1978. Think about that. You designed and planned your reactor in 1971. By 1978, all these new requirements had to be satisfied. These plants all began construction between 1972 and 1975. Shoreham in New York, 12-year delay, canceled. Midland in Michigan, 13-year delay, canceled. Sequoia in Tennessee, 8-year delay. Comanche Peak in Texas, 10 years. Seabrook in New Hampshire, 14 years. The utility went bankrupt, the first utility bankruptcy since the Great Depression.
We're here to review the licensing and whether the Seabrook plant received its full power license on March 1st after 17 years of delay. And those delays in Seabrook have been staggering.
If you're an investor or utility and you watch this happen to everyone building a nuclear reactor, would you try to build one? You would not. $44 million per month is too much. But then add in $20 million in lost revenue from not operating for that month, and every month of delay adds about 3 months of operating the plant at full capacity flawlessly to get back that 1 month of delay.
The capital cost of building a nuclear power has increased tenfold over the last decade.
That financial math stopped working, a large part of it due to the increase in materials needed. The amount of concrete, steel, and cable required to get a license doubled, but the number of man-hours required to build a plant went up 600%, all during the exact time when interest rates in the U.S. were exploding. An investor in 1980 could buy government bonds and get 12% interest. Why give a ton of money to a nuclear project when the outcome was becoming unpredictable? And you could just buy bonds instead. Nuclear died over the course of about 10 years, and it could not come back. Good. By the time interest rates came back down in the 90s, suppliers, experts, engineers were tired or out of business. Building a new plant or reactor was almost a grassroots movement again. Now, to be fair, perhaps all of these rules did, in fact, lead to safer nuclear plants. Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, Fukushima, they all caught major headlines. But the loss of life over all situations that have ever developed at any nuclear reactor is very small. It's important to acknowledge that, and frankly, there's no way to disprove it. But it has come with a major trade-off that affects billions of people, because this thing could power the entire city of San Francisco. It's the most recent reactor built in the U.S., turned on in 2023. It is the fourth of 4 reactors on a site about the size of 4 Central Parks. Together, those 4 reactors could power all of Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Queens. Everything, homes, factories, office buildings, with a little room to spare. This density, this tiny land footprint, the complete lack of emissions, it's as clean as solar and wind. The stuff that comes out of the top is just water vapor. This is what makes nuclear so attractive to so many people, especially when we look at the alternatives. Assuming very sunny skies, solar would require at least 25 times the land. Assuming solid wind, wind turbines would require 300 times the amount of land. Natural gas would actually take up less land, a lot less. Coal, about half. They require big coal yards to feed the furnace. Right here, we're going to leave coal and natural gas behind. Amazing, stable, and absolutely critical sources of electricity. In fact, the first video I ever put out on this channel was about natural gas. But what comes out of them in addition to electricity is not what most people would prefer. Even if the sun shines perfectly all day, every day in a place near enough to New York that a solar farm could deliver electricity over a reasonable distance of transmission lines, the sun goes down at night, which means a big chunk of the energy the solar panels collected would need to be stored in batteries. Many of them, increasing the land footprint of the solar option by at least 5%, which is enough space to build 4 more nuclear reactors. And what is often not mentioned with solar is that whatever in the 150 square miles that was soaking up the sun, the solar panels are now soaking up, is going to find life to be much different, maybe impossible. All of this is the same for wind. It doesn't blow all the time, or it might blow at the wrong time, located too far away from the place that needs to use it. But the footprint of each windmill is pretty small. So the actual land that's underneath can, in theory, be used for other things like grazing cattle. This is the kind of thing they do in Texas, which has by far the most windmills of any U.S. state. Texas, the oil state. Believe that. But with wildlife, what is rarely talked about with windmills, 2 groups of animals love to fly in the air column dominated by the blades of a windmill. About 100 to 250 feet in the air where wind is most consistent. Wind is a transportation system for bugs and birds, and wind farms are strategically placed right in the middle of the highway. Blades become caked with bugs. Whole companies have sprouted up just to provide the service of blade cleaning to wind farms because the amount of bugs they cake up can lower the efficiency of a windmill by 20 to 25%. Bugs are a critical part of the food chain. Everything else relies on them. And the birds?
These turbines in Northern California kill on average 80 golden eagles a year. In the South, this project kills fewer birds, but at a higher rate.
It's the big protected birds. Eagles, hawks, not like your little sparrow kind of
tell you,
neighborhood
eagles
birds
and hawks.
that litter the base areas of windmills, which are all made of concrete. Each one sitting on a 12-foot deep, 50-foot wide slab. Cabling, fiberglass, aluminum, transportation, everything that goes into building a wind farm puts them at least on par with all the materials required to build a nuclear plant. And each windmill has a lifespan of only 20 to 25 years, compared to a nuclear plant which runs for 80 years, maybe more. We can go on looking at the different trade-offs between all these ways to generate electricity. They do exist both ways. It's important to acknowledge. But when you really back out the safety aspect, the decades of data on radiation, the low land requirement, how reliable the electricity from nuclear is, it's challenging to come up with a great reason to build something else instead of nuclear plants. The one that usually bookends this discussion is nuclear waste. What to do with it? What if someone steals it? No one is going to steal these heavy concrete blocks that encase the spent nuclear fuel. Stored above ground, you can walk up and touch them. Even if they did manage to lug one off unnoticed, they'd have to figure out a way to make the fuel inside 20 times more potent. Something Iran's military has been trying very hard and unsuccessfully to do for decades. Each nuclear reactor creates about 1 per year. That's the cost to give 1 million homes emission-free electricity. And there are compelling answers to all of those questions that piggyback off the radiation that we talked about earlier. Ultimately, again, it boils down to the fear. We can all feel it. Maybe it was the Simpsons' fault.
Yeah, well, it's always been like that.
Maybe it was the use and testing of atomic weapons and the imagery around all of that. Maybe it was the nuclear industry's fault, insisting that nuclear is fail-safe, nothing would ever go wrong, and then things went wrong at a bunch of nuclear plants. What else are you lying about? Perhaps smaller is the key, because when a nuclear submarine smashes up through Arctic ice, the nuclear reactor that powers it is fine. In service for over 70 years, there has never been a problem, let alone a meltdown on a nuclear-powered submarine or aircraft carrier. And we're not just talking a handful of these things. More than 200, traveling millions of miles around the globe, all fitted with a nuclear reactor that produces about 8% of the power the newest reactor in the U.S. we looked at earlier does. Going up and down in the ocean, fast, slow, vertical, horizontal.
And everyone should have known that small and micro nuclear reactors were going to be a thing, because each and every one of us, I'm sure, has said, oh, the military, the government has technology for 20 to 30 years before we get it. And we've all known about nuclear subs, nuclear aircraft carriers. We just never put it, well, most people didn't put it together. Those are micro nuclear reactors, and we've had them for 70 years. That's how I knew that'd be a good thing.
These are a critical part of the nuclear defense system. They have to work. This, basically a nuclear submarine engine, is what they're talking about if you've heard the term small modular reactor, or SMR, putting a submarine reactor on land and doing it exactly the way the Navy does it, which is where the modular comes from in modular reactor. Build the whole thing, all the pieces in a factory, and then ship them to where they need to be installed. As opposed to today, where a nuclear reactor is bespoke and almost entirely built on site. This cookie cutter approach, every reactor is the same, keeps costs down. If something breaks on one, you know right where to look on all the others. This is what GE says the one they're building in Ontario, Canada will look like. At about 5%, the physical size of a normal nuclear plant, power-hungry data centers feeding AI are clamoring for these and would love to have their own SMR. That's one of the reasons nuclear has become a hot topic again. We might be near it. The CEO...
Oh, by the way, I already knew all this stuff when I started telling you guys about NNE and OKLO. This is like old news to me, but it's now being released by other people that have more viewers than I've got. So I don't know. I've known about it for a while. I've told you guys about it for a while.
Of GE says there's now, due to a big shakeup at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, a very real chance these become a meaningful addition to the grid starting in 2030. Maybe, just maybe.
See you later, Ward. Thanks
is
for
what
stopping
shakes
by,
the U.S.
brother.
out of its nuclear days. Because this, a
thumbs up.
giant, ominous nuclear plant that everyone has learned to associate with the green goop from The Simpsons might just be too big of a mental hurdle for us to get past. We'll see. My instincts say the U.S. is turning the corner on nuclear, but you never know until it's done.
Fear is like beer. I guess. I don't know. It rhymed. I don't know where I was going with that. I know where we're going. We're going to TED Talks. I'm going to give him a thumbs up. Crows. Lord only knows.
In one of Aesop's 2,500-year-old fables, a crow is searching for water. It spies a pitcher and discovers liquid inside. But it's beyond reach. Soon, pebbles into the pitcher. One by one, they displace the water, and the crow quenches its thirst. Interestingly, this fable turns out to be pretty accurate. In a 2014 experiment, scientists placed a food reward in a tube partially filled with water and watched as crow after crow dropped stone after stone in until the food was in beak-snatching distance. This is just one of many fascinating displays of intelligence from corvids, the bold, brainy family of songbirds that includes crows, ravens, jays, and magpies. To start, corvids are strategic when it comes to their food. They ransack trash bins and snatch bites from under other birds' beaks. They also hoard and cache their food. A single Clark's nutcracker, for instance, is thought to scatter some 30,000 pine nuts across more than 2,000 cache sites, which it can recover more than 9 months later. And in one experiment, scrub jays given waxworms and peanuts cached and retrieved the perishable worms first and left the peanuts for later. It seemed the jays not only recalled where they buried things, but also what they buried and when. What's more, experiments show that scrub jays will bury food when they know it won't be available the next day, suggesting they can plan for future events too. And corvid abilities extend beyond meal prepping. In one experiment, a masked person trapped and released a wild crow. When the masked person returned, crows dive-bombed them. If they wore a different mask, however, they were ignored, suggesting that corvids can distinguish between, and remember, different human facial characteristics. Crows also tend to gather around the bodies of their dead companions and caw, a behavior sometimes likened to a funeral. And one study showed that crows were slower to return to an area where they'd seen a dead companion, suggesting they associated it with risk. Corvids, like New Caledonian crows, also demonstrate an impressive proclivity for reasoning and tool use. Even in the wild, they fashion sticks into hook-shaped probes for food. Some Japanese crows have been observed placing nuts on the road, waiting nearby, then retrieving the rewards once passing cars have cracked them open. The corvids also do things that are harder to explain. They sometimes tote trinkets around, which might help them practice caching or serve as gifts to their partners. And they've been spotted repeatedly sledding down roofs on plastic lids, Play activities like this are relatively common in corvids, especially juveniles. Corvids have a longer developmental period than other songbirds, and it's thought that play encourages learning and lays a strong foundation for their intelligent behavior. Some researchers think cleverness is crucial to the highly social lives of corvids. They breed cooperatively, live and communicate in large dynamic groups, share food, and mob predators together. Some have lifelong partnerships, where they recognize their companions and track, respond to, and even predict each other's behaviors and desires. Scientists today consider corvids among the smartest animals, a big step from where consensus used to be. In the late 1800s, German scientist Ludwig Edinger compared primate and crow brains and interpreted the crow's brain structure as primitive, dismissing their cognitive abilities. This was a misinterpretation. A raven, for example, has a brain that looks quite different than a capuchin monkey's and is about a third of the size. But both animals have a similar number of neurons in their pallium, a brain region that's associated with cognition. So while corvid brains traveled a very different evolutionary path than primate brains, it was still one that brought them sophisticated cognition. The next time you spot a crow, you can be assured of its smarts. Just maybe don't give it a bad reason to remember you. If you find yourself thinking, I want to be as smart as those corvids, then you should give Brilliant a try. Brilliant helps learners at all levels build critical...
No, it doesn't. What builds critical thinking is jumping off the boat up when it gets sunk by an iceberg and surviving. That means you got critical thinking. Otherwise, you don't, and you're dead. Survival of the fittest. Let's see here. Let's go to more shipbuilding. We've talked about every other kind of shipbuilding, but what we haven't talked about is the Army and their need for ships, added to the secondary fleet's need for 250 ships, the Navy's need for 17 to 18 warships. We now have, well, the Marines also need a few aircraft carriers and landing ships. Now, this story is about Army watercraft modernization. So the Army needs ships.
Take a look
as
at
well.
what's likely the most heavily armored golf cart in history. Hey everyone, and welcome to Weapons and Warfare, a show made for folks who want to know more about the U.S. national defense. Our goal here is pretty simple. We want to help you have an informed conversation about what's happening with America's military. So for Straight Arrow News, I'm your host, Ryan Robertson, and we're starting this week with the U.S. Army in a mission you might not know that it has. Believe it or not, this is not a Navy vessel. It's an Army landing craft. You see, it says it right there, U.S. Army. And as Army leadership continues to reshape their force with an eye on a potential conflict in the Pacific, the importance of the Army's fleet of watercraft just continues to grow.
Think of the U.S. Army in action, and it's likely tanks and helicopters are part of the picture.
Identify! Fire!
And while they're not as connected with the country's oldest branch of the military, watercraft play a crucial role in the Army's power projection, especially in places like the Indo-Pacific. It's responsible for moving supplies, equipment, and troops in deep ocean water, shallow coastal waters, inland waterways, even rivers.
I liken it to having a bunch of different tools in the toolbox that we can employ in that dynamic distribution. Sea lines of communication, air lines of communication, and ground lines of communication. And watercraft will be a connector of many of those different other modes and bringing that to bear.
Colonel William Arnold is the Chief of Transportation for the U.S. Army's Transportation Corps. At this year's AUSA Global Force Symposium in Alabama, he led a session focused on the future of Army watercraft, acknowledging while the Army's current fleet of vessels is...
Hold on a second. Now, Alabama only has one city on the Gulf Coast where there's water like that. That'd be Mobile, Alabama, where they have a port where they're building naval warships. Now it appears they're going to be building Army warships. How interesting. That area of the country is going to be very prosperous. Kind of one reason why I'm moving down there. And another is, well, there's several actually. I want to build boats, and they've got a big port that's growing.
Aging, it's still capable of meeting mission demands. and at some point integrating with emerging tech.
We're looking for help to understand how can we do littoral mapping without having to put mariners in the water to go figure out what beach gradients are, for example, to see if we can beach one of our watercraft. We're looking for capabilities that are out there that can do that rapidly, be able to use AI to feed decisions back into the mariner populations before we decide we're going to bring any vessel or any capabilities to a beach, for example.
According to the Government Accountability Office, here's what the Army has at its disposal and what's on the horizon. 8 logistics support vessels that are capable of delivering vehicles and general cargo. 17 LCUs, that stands for Landing Craft Utility. Those are capable of delivering 350 short tons of cargo or 320 combat-equipped personnel. Next up, 9 LCMs, that's Landing Craft Mechanized. Those carry troops, cargo, and equipment. There are 6 small tugs for repositioning other watercraft and 30 modular causeway systems for a total of 70 watercraft. Plus, the Army is expected to acquire 13 new maneuver support vessels by 2036.
So that capability right there is really new capability that we're bringing in that can maneuver in the tactical zone and maneuver forces very rapidly in and around the littoral areas.
Brigadier General Shane Upton of the Army Futures Command tells us Army leadership is also looking to industry partners and embracing the opportunities autonomous vessels offer a force with a growing list of responsibilities while experiencing potentially tighter budgets.
And what you're going to hear probably next year or the year after that, there's a company building a port in Louisiana along the Gulf of America that they're totally only building autonomous boats. They're going to start off with 2-meter long ones. And after they demonstrate they can successfully build those, they'll probably get a contract with the Department of Defense, and they will start building bigger ones up to 100-meter long autonomous warcraft that are unmanned. But that's being built now. It's not a story. But you heard it here first. Well, you heard it from me first here now.
We're going to put autonomous boats in the water as the Army, and we're going to pair them with those mariners and have them learn the collaborative behaviors, how to command and control them, give us an assessment and feedback from a soldier that does this for the United States Army in a forward theater.
Chief Warrant Officer Nicholas Laferty with the Army's Combined Arms Support Command says it's about embracing the idea of doing a lot more with less.
We're open to tiers of autonomy on our current craft, how we can just take one step up the ladder to potentially reduce that load and make those war fighters' lives a little bit more focused, right? Let their focused energy be on the threat at its hand.
For all that's different between the Army and Navy's fleets, there are parallels, especially in terms of maintenance. According to that GAO report we talked about earlier, the Army's watercraft fleet experienced a significant drop in its fully mission-capable rate.
We need to build more ships in the Army now.
75% in 2020 to less than 40% in 2024. Major General Michael Layler of the Army's Tank Automotive and Armaments Command is backing a push for 3D printing in the field to turn things around.
The idea is fix forward, deliver forward, and this particular level of maintenance in watercraft is ripe for it because no two watercraft, as all you know out there, many of you who are near and dear to your heart, none of them are the same. They're snowflakes. And so there's all sorts of non-standard parts that could be advanced manufactured. And honestly, it's a great ground for expansion of technology and solving problems.
So what's next? How does the Army's fleet overcome its maintenance issues and stand ready for action in the Pacific should the call come? First, General Layler says, like the Navy, the Army is actively looking for allied partners to help bridge the gap.
We are in next year going to expand our ability to contract maintenance to other countries that we haven't used before. Predominantly, we've been West Coast, East Coast, Hawaii, Japan, Korea. Now we're going to see us expand to Guam, Singapore, Philippines, Australia, you name it. I've been to most of them in the last 6 months trying to drum.
No. That is because our society, since the beginning of this fiat dollar in 1971, Believe it or not, I was only 3, but key points I remember when I was that young. And that's when even more newer modern conveniences were coming along. In the early 70s, there was still black and white TV in most places, cobblestone, concrete roads in rural areas. We were a very still unsophisticated country in reality. And since then to now, we have gotten so many technological advantages, and food that has been easy, or excuse me, the perception of food has been made easier to grab and facilitated by government regulation. As far as EBT, you could buy sodas and candies with, well, in the 70s, what they gave us for food stamps was a block of bologna and a block of cheese. So things have changed, and people haven't realized the change, or have forgotten that it's changed, or doesn't know that it's changed. And people have sold out to convenience. And those big major corporations knew human psychology would sell out for convenience, so they filled them with poison and basically making money off of all the stupid people out there that don't realize what's going on and poison themselves by eating the food that they're eating. Because it's not
up some business, and business will be good.
As for adding watercraft, in March, then Deputy Chief of Staff for the U.S. Army Pacific, Major General Jeffrey Van Antwerp, told Stars and Stripes in a conference call, quote, that leased vessels provide a pretty phenomenal capability and a pretty high level of readiness. No word yet on how many, if any, vessels have been leased.
All right, joined now by super producer Brett Baker. Brett, would we...
I don't want to talk to Brett. I want to talk to you. And as far as leasing, they're going to find out that's not a good thing, because they're going to find out that China builds a lot of them, and they don't want anything built Chinese because it's going to be made in America. And, well, we need to build back our manufacturing for steel in our steel industry, and shoving a lot of taxpayer dollars at the boat building, steel, military boat building industry is the fastest way to make that happen. But having said that, the brakes could get put on it with automation. If this company in Baton Rouge, they're building a dock right now, it'll probably be 2027 before the military contracts with them. And that means that we will start phasing out man-operated boats for autonomous boats. We'll still have a navy of men, but it'll drop by like 30, 40, 50%, lowering the budget of the military, increasing the automation and lethality of the military. They've got it with F-47 or something, F-42. As I was telling people about a year ago, the new generation fighters, one-man fighter, 6 drone fighters acting as support vessels and defense vessels for that one-man fighter. You can the advantageousness of that, if you understand the way strategy works in war, you got to arm your planes with the right types of missiles for the right types of missions. If the mission changes and the warplane doesn't have the right missiles, that warplane is fucking useless. I don't care how much it costs. So if you have one warplane and 6 subordinate robot warplanes, each one of those armed with as much as the warplane, it can accommodate several mission changes en route or additional missions after the first mission is completed, which totally changes the game of a military. And if you're like, say, the CCP, and you see us do that, and you're like, wow, we only have like 3,000 freaking military planes. How many does America have? What? 14,500. Now we got to times 5 that number, because all of them are going to have 5 companion robot planes. So they're going to have like 60,000 freaking planes. Yeah, we're not going to win a war against them. Holy shit. Now they also have the Manta. What? What's the Manta? Oh, it's a 34 by 34 autonomous submarine that looks like a manta ray that can just go somewhere and sit, be turned off, and it just sends up a buoy every 6 months, get new information if it should just sit there, or if it needs to go to war and do some damage. Holy shit. Yeah. People don't go to war. You don't want to go to war with America. Wow, people that don't keep a week's worth of food, Silver, that is horrible for them. And if you want to know who's going to be the ones crying, knocking at your door, that's the dude. Start buying some extra cans of tuna for him and set it to the side. Yeah, Jeffro, 68 Ford Falcon, 4-door. We used to, we had a, what was it? It was a Jeep Wagoneer, I think they were. It looked like a Bronco, but it was a Jeep. It was a 60s, late 60s model. It wasn't mine, it was my dad's and mom's. True that, Mo. You can also make ice cream at home. It's a lot healthier for you too, you know. Was it found on the road dead, or was it a fucked up rebuilt Dodge, Mo? I've heard both. Those were acronyms for Ford. F-O-R-D, found on road dead, fucked up, rebuilt Dodge. First on race day, Jeffro Bodine is a Ford lover. You must have watched the story of Ford and Lamborghini, or was it Ford and Ferrari? I think it was Ford and Ferrari having a competitive racing. I'm actually a Ford guy myself. But having said that, that's if I ever want to spend the money to get what I want. My budget for cars is $1,000. So whatever I can buy for $1,000, that's the car I like. My most recent one is a 2011 Ford Scion XB. I bought for $1,000. I put $1,200 into it, other than gas and oil changes, and had it 4 years. So the car cost $250 a year. Next year it drops down to $200 a year. You know, I'm kind of frugal like that. Now I am going to start an LLC, several actually, and they will have need to buy new cars for reasons of appearance when I go to meetings and stuff like that. Rather than show up in a Fred Flintstone car where, wearing flip-flops, I got to kind of dress up, shave, cut my hair, and dress up nice and have a nice car to show up, truck to show up in. So the LLC will probably lease for tax reasons, something. We'll see what's best at the time. I have a lot of connections in Alabama for cars. I know I got a lot of guys that have their auto dealer's license. So it could be possible that I could get a new car at cost, which means it wouldn't lose value driven off the lot. That would be a good buy for a company, not for a person, but for a company. And I might, if I can get that deal, I'll do that, but I'll do it in a company name, so that way I'd still write off everything for the vehicle. Fix it again, Tony. Yeah, it is what it is when it comes to getting high miles in cars. There's a lot of mechanics down there. I mean, you just put a new part in, it doesn't matter how many miles is on the car. After 150,000, if you haven't replaced for older cars, timing chain, newer cars, timing belt, do it. Don't wait for it to break, because then you'll have to do the water pump, the fan belt, and a whole bunch of other shit that'll cost you more. So why wait? If there's so when you buy a car, you look at the mileage, ask some questions. If the car's got 200,000, hey, has the timing belt or chain been replaced? Have they done piston work, head work on it, or whatever? Ask just some basic questions, so you know what you should do right off the bat to prevent. It's called preventative maintenance, to prevent more expensive problems later. But no one thinks like that. Well, no, what it is, Jeffro, is it's real beautiful driving down there, and there's a lot of people that'll do antique shopping type stuff, And all throughout Alabama, every weekend, there is an estate sale. You just got to drive down that country road. My dad, before he died, him and his second or third wife, once a month would take the whole day driving the old Alabama roads, country roads, looking for estate sales. Got some good deals after a while. I mean, not every time, but they put in a lot of driving, just looking, not even knowing what they were looking for or if they would find it. And a lot of people are like that down there. I know back in the 80s, there was a banana boat that used to come into Pensacola Harbor, Pensacola, Florida. And then the captain, the owner of the boat, it was a smaller boat. He would always want money on the way back. I think he was going to Panama or Ecuador or something like that, somewhere down that way. And he would buy up a lot of Honda Civics because it was in the night. It was late 80s, early 90s. I don't know. Can't remember quite the year. But he used to buy up Honda Civics, load them up on this banana boat, and take them back to Ecuador, El Salvador, wherever he came from, and sell them at a premium. And he'd get them real cheap here in America. That way he'd make money on the way back for his boat, for gas and stuff like that. So there is a lot of different ways to make money on vehicles, especially if you're a purchaser for that dude. I wasn't. I had a friend that was, and he got paid to look for cars for that guy when he came in town to buy, and he'd give the person some money for finding the car so he didn't have to waste his time. See, Jeffro, down there, I guess that is considered a distance to travel. I've lived here in the Bay Area since 1996, so all of this millennium, and 60 miles is an accepted day's drive. That's just how it is. To get to, if there was a job in Oakland, which is a pretty big city, close city, usually has a lot of jobs in it, that's like 50-mile round trip. So it's that's an everyday drive. Down there, I guess they consider that long distance. They ought to be happy though, because 40 miles down there in Alabama, you can get done a lot quicker than 50 miles out here, 40 miles out here, because out here there's 11 million souls on that road wanting to get to work, and the road's only so wide, and it's always packed with dumbasses, and they always get in wrecks, and there's always traffic jams the whole 20 to 30 miles. And typically on the way back, you'll run into one as well. So it usually takes 2 hours of your driving to go 50 miles, 2 hours and 50 miles. So I'm sure they get it done quicker there. Well, the key is, Jeffro, as far as employment, my self-employment, when I first moved down there, is going to be to the bedroom right next to the bedroom I'm asleep in, because I'll be making gyms in that room and selling them after I finish tearing them apart, putting them back together. My other job down there will be going to whatever property someone else is going to buy for me and then turn over to me to do the lightning crystal thing. And that'll be, I don't know, within 10 to 15 miles of where I'm going to be buying. And then the furthest I'm going to have to travel is from where I'm going to buy my house down in that area to Mobile City Hall to start talking to them about starting my catamaran building company in their port and getting concessions and whatnot from them to do that. So first job, when I first get there, I won't have to leave the house for. Second job, I'll have to go to my other property for. Third job, I'll have to probably drive 30, 40 miles round trip. Yes, that is. Yes. I was just talking to someone yesterday about that. I'm looking at going back to Zambia, making plans to go back to Zambia probably sometime. Depends on what happens and how it happens. 2026, 2027 to introduce to them the bee fencing system, the elephant fencing system, because they really need it down there. And I'm just going to give them that idea. That is a separate idea from the mobile apiary thing. And the reason why I'm going to give the country the idea of the elephant fencing system is, for one, they need it. For two, it buys me leverage. I can get them to help me and back me deploy my mobile apiary in their country. And I can get them to kind of fund it and take profit from it and make, because I think the third largest income of GDP for Zambia, and Google this, back in 2014, it was honey, sale of honey. And there's lots of problems with honey. Not only is there a problem with beekeepers, it's the way they keep bees. They don't get the max amount of money for their honey because it has a smoky taste to it by the way they extract honey. So they've got problems with the full cycle of beekeeping down there, not just certain issues that occur in other areas. Even in the extraction of the honey, they have problems with the sale by their extraction techniques. It's very primitive. So my system could actually increase that country's GDP. That's why I kind of chose that country, because I needed a small country that had honey as a main product for their GDP, which is Zambia. And I looked at and saw what they have, ran the numbers, the mathematical numbers on what they have. Then I looked at the country and saw the potential, and that's when I came across a United Nations 2012 botanical report saying that Zambia, just in the western half of the country, has potential because of the mango trees to produce 300 metric tons a year of honey. They're not doing that right now in their whole country because they don't have access, because they don't have mobility. So that's when I decided also to choose that country specifically to go to, because I think that they would be most easily talked into the introduction of a new profitable beekeeping and honey extraction system proven here in America over what they have now in their country. And that'll gain the company notoriety, and also the elephant fencing system notoriety for the company, because it's going to be put out in the mobile apiary company's name in that area of Africa, and that actually means something, name recognition down there. It actually will help not get shit stolen, because there's a lot of theft that goes down there because they don't have a good economy, a good government economy, a stable system like we have here. So there's theft is a commonality down there. But if they respect you and they know you've done something for their country, they actually won't fuck with your shit. And so I figured if I give them the elephant fencing system first in the name of the beekeeping company, then bring the beekeeping company in there, the mobile apiary company, I'll actually get help from the locals rather than hindered from the locals. That's the plan for that one. Let me see, get back on chat here. Okay, Silver, it's just under 100-mile round trip for me to buy dog food. Holy shit. Have you ever heard of delivery? I'm sorry, man. I go across town for the cat food. It's like 30-mile round trip for my cat food. So it's not, I mean, you live in a good spot. You're not having the local kids come fuck with your shit because you're not living near people. The adverse effect of that is you drive a little further to get supplies. It's a worthwhile trade-off, in my opinion. So yes, Jeffrey, I'm still in the, I had to stop it because here in this town, it's not illegal to keep bees, but you can't have a bee hive within 150 foot of a residence, which means you have to have 300-foot clearance between residencies. Google Vallejo and tell me if there's a spot that's 300 foot without a house. So it's not illegal to keep bees here. You just can't legally. But they didn't make it illegal. Oh, I was pissed when Bob Sampaio gave the passing of that bill. I was a friend of mine who was mayor at the time. Oh, I was so fucking pissed at him. And I also went out to Mirror Island and put my shit out there, and they said you can't have them out there because of the fire department and all this other shit in case there's a fire. And then there was a fire. I did a video on it. And then that fire, the helicopter was bringing in buckets of water. I did a video from my rooftop of it because I can see it. And I found out the next day through the news that the fire went further than it had to because someone was keeping bees out there. And it was the dude that was my competition. So I got kind of a little pissed off at this town about beekeeping because my friend, the mayor, went out of his way to meet. But, you know, hey, it's all good. I'll go to Alabama, California. Yeah, that's the history of that one here. But you know what? It doesn't matter. It's just not the time or the place. Yeah, low crime area. That's why it's, you know, a good place to live. Silver. See, if you guys want old car parts, go down to Cuba. They have so many 1950s model parts and cars. She looks like she's fixing to jump on something. Very focused. What are you looking at? My area is a high crime area. I can go on my phone and look at Neighborhood Watch. I think two people have been killed this week. One by hit and run, one body just found. Just found a body. Interesting. The other guy got hit by a car, and the car ran off. Probably not a legal resident or person without a driver's license and insurance. So a logical conclusion, that wouldn't be illegal alien. Because what they do out here, anyhow, is if they get in a wreck, you'll see them all run. You know you're fucked. Because you just got hit by a car that's probably stolen, not registered, or not insured because the people ran. So you're going to have to pay for the damage. Welcome to America. And buy insurance. It doesn't pay. Out here in California, it pays to get uninsured motorist insurance. And it costs you more out of your paycheck because the leaders want to get votes. So every month you have to pay more to securely drive so they can get votes. That doesn't sound American. I could be wrong. I could be on LSD. Who the hell knows? All right, you guys quit with the car talk. This is not a car channel. I'm gonna have to put on some more Chinese crap. Oh, you guys want to see some more shit about the explosive playing chicken with warships in the Filipino Sea? I do have a video for that. It's better than their bigger engines, and they're playing chicken, and they actually hit each other. It's kind of cool. And the red spot you see, it is not blood. It's the anchor chain area, locker chain area with the amount of chain, rested chain that ship, the smaller Chinese Coast Guard ship has. I'll show you.
Yan Island in the South China conflict came to a sudden halt within 3 seconds, but those 3 seconds revealed a carefully set up conflict and deeper internal contradictions. The Chinese Coast Guard ship number 3104, with water cannons on its port side, was rapidly chasing the Philippine patrol boat Suluan and was preparing to cut in from the right rear of the Philippine vessel. The 350-ton Suluan was dodging left and right